What is happening, Chiefs Kingdom? We're back for another episode of Gridiron Lines. This is RGR Football, and today we're going to take a little bit of a detour and do a review of the Chiefs defense and how the rookies have stepped in to help the Chiefs defense thus far in the season. So let's get at it. Still can't get over how good that intro is. So today we're going to start off with the fan shout out like we always do, and today's fan shout out goes to Avery Fleming. And he says, I'm telling you, I'm calling it now. Noah Gray played quarterback for 2 years in high school. At some point, they will fake the sneak and rise up and hit Travis Kelsey or Jody Fortson on a delay. It's coming. I love this comment because it just puts an image in my head of that play actually unfolding and everyone losing their minds. It kind of reminds me of the Don Terry Poe Christmas Eve or Christmas game. I can't remember when it was, but it was versus the Broncos, and the Chiefs were killing them. And Poe acted like he was going to smash through the line to try to run the ball into the end zone, and pulls up and kind of does a Jordan-esque float pass to I can't even remember what tight end it was at the time. I think it was Demetrius Harris, and that was one of the coolest plays I ever saw, and it was definitely an awesome Christmas gift from Coach Reed. So, thank you, Avery, once again. You're always dropping great comments, so really appreciate your presence here. So, now I want to talk about our little detour today. We are going to go over Andy Reid's grade versus the Raiders on Monday night, but I want to talk about the Chiefs' defense for a little bit. So before the season started, we had mentioned a lot how the Chiefs defense needed the rookies to have an impact early on for the Chiefs to have the best shot of winning games and playing their best football. And we're 5 games into the season, so almost a third of the way through. And I wanted to take a moment to go over how the Chiefs have used their defensive rookies and whether or not I think things are working out for the Chiefs defense as far as injecting that younger talent. So the first player the Chiefs drafted was Trent McDuffie, and we all know he had a hamstring injury thanks to the turf conditions in Arizona during Week 1. In that game, he had taken 32 snaps, so he was getting the lion's share of looks out there on the outside cornerback role. And prior to him getting hurt, it looked like he was going to be a piece the Chiefs were using a lot. In that game, PFF graded him about a 70, which is a good to average level starter in the NFL. So make no mistake, his presence or his absence has hurt the Chiefs defense thus far in the season. You really want to hope he can come back for the Bills game and he can come back at 100% because as you're going to see, the Chiefs could use some help on the defensive side of the ball. Karlaftis, in 5 games, he's tallied 260 snaps, which is about a 76% snap percentage. He's been getting a ton of plays, a ton of action along defensive line, trying to make an impact. He has been, I think, one of the most utilized Chiefs pass rushers so far in 2022. And unfortunately, while he has had a number of pressures, his quarterback hits and his sack totals are not where I'd want to see them as far as what I would expect from a first round rookie taken, in last year's draft. He's had 3 quarterback hits in those 5 games and tallied half a sack. That half a sack came versus the Raiders last week. So maybe he's starting to catch on. But right now, PFF has him graded as a 50, which is a replacement level or a guy that can come off the bench and give you some good snaps. Not a quality starter according to PFF. So he's got to continue to improve. And this is an overall problem for the Chiefs defense as a whole, their pass rush. So as the season starts to unfold, you can kind of see how things are playing out. And on as far as the Chiefs pass rush is concerned, they've got Carlos Dunlap. He's graded out by PFF as a 55. He hasn't had too much production. Frank Clark, PFF grades him out at a 49. So all of the Chiefs' primary pass rushers on the edge are rated as good backups. And this is not good news for the start of the season. And as the season unfolds and is unfolding, we're seeing that one of the weaknesses of this Chiefs team, and we were worried about it, is their pass rush. And so Spagnuolo has really done a good job this year dialing up pressure from unusual places. He's been doing a great job of mixing in his blitz looks, mixing in his pressure packages, and that's led the Chiefs to have one of the best pressure percentages in the NFL. But you can't expect and continue to go into that well and try to manufacture pressure by rushing five guys or six guys because you're going to go up against a quarterback like Josh Allen who can beat the blitz. And you're going to need games, especially going into the playoffs, where you can get to the quarterback with just four guys. And so that means that George Karlaftis has to continue to improve. Frank Clark and Carlos Dunlap, we already know what they are. So they're kind of doing what we expected. It's Karlaftis who needs to step up. He's the piece that I think has to improve. And right now, this is a weakness on the Chiefs team. So if the Chiefs were to lose in the playoffs, you always want to look at what is the deadly weakness or the fatal weakness or fatal flaw that a team has. And in the playoffs, the Chiefs' fatal flaw looks like it could be potentially their pass rush, especially along the edge. Now, there's still a lot of games left to be played, and the Chiefs' defense, particularly George Karlaftis, can improve. And I think Karlaftis has the biggest chance of improving. So that's one area where the Chiefs have got to improve, and they've been lackluster so far this season. Bryan Cook, he has played in 5 games, has 95 snaps, and has a 28 percentage snap percentage. So he's been on the field on 28% of the Chiefs' defensive plays. He's made some pretty good plays through the season. I remember there was one play where he knocked the ball out of the hands of the receiver versus the Buccaneers. That was a good play. He was close to knocking the ball out of the hands of Devontae Adams uh, on Monday night versus the Raiders. PFF has him graded as a 57, which is an above average backup. So once again, we're seeing this recurring theme here. The Chiefs rookies, they haven't really gotten a rookie who's been playing at a starting caliber level. And this is not what we want to hear 5 games into the season. Leo Chenal has had 71 snaps in his 5 games, and he's been on the defense playing 20% of the snaps so far in the season. He has one quarterback hit and 5 tackles. And once again, he's graded as a 54, which is a replacement level player or a backup level player. Uh, and like I said, that trend just continues. Joshua Williams. Now, this one's a little bit curious because we saw early on in the season, especially during the preseason, he was getting a lot of run with the ones. So we were thinking, okay, well, Joshua Williams might be the guy that maybe replaces Fenton. But then as the season started and the regular season started and they started playing games for real, he wasn't used anymore. He has 17 snaps in 5 games so far in 2022, and he's only played on 5% of the defensive plays for the Chiefs defense, and he's only netted 1 tackle, no pass breakups. Uh, but he does have one of the higher PFF grades, so take it with a grain of salt. It's only 17 snaps, but PFF rated him as a 76, which is a starter caliber player, and it's only 17 snaps. So, like I said, take that with a grain of salt. Lastly, we have Jaylen Watson. So he was the opposite of Joshua Williams. Didn't seem like he was getting a lot of run with the ones during preseason, but after McDuffie went out and got hurt, Jaylen Watson came in and was the player who picked up the outside cornerback role for the Chiefs defense. He's played in 239 snaps. He's been on the field for 70% of the defensive plays for the Chiefs. And I think that would be more if McDuffie hadn't played in week one. And he's had 20 tackles, 4 pass deflections, and 1 interception. And PFF ranks him as a 55 or 56, which is also another backup level player, but a good backup level player. As far as his role in the defense goes, I think he's stepped in admirably for a 7th round pick. Once McDuffie gets back, hopefully next week. It'll be interesting to see how the Chiefs handle their cornerback room because I think that Watson has more potential than Fenton, and he's also shown that he's a little less inclined to get a pass interference penalty or some holding penalty that affects the outcome of the game than Fenton. So Jalen Watson has been a bright spot as far as the Chiefs draft goes because he's a seventh round rookie. Didn't expect a lot from him coming in, and he stepped in admirably. And you hope to see him improve throughout the season. So, lastly, there's Najee Johnson, and he hasn't taken a single snap. Overall, if you're looking at this Chiefs draft class defensively, you have to perhaps be a little bit concerned because none of the players have really stepped up and shown that they have the potential, or none of the players have stepped up and played at a starter level. Yes, Jalen Watson has had his moments. George Karlaftis has had his moments. They've all had their moments. But in totality, we really needed these Chiefs defensive players to step up early on, especially the rookies, and that hasn't happened. That doesn't mean things can't change throughout the rest of the season, but as of now, they're young players. They're getting a chance to play. Steve Spagnuolo is putting them out there to play, just like we thought early on in the season, and they've got to improve. I think the one blue chip player for the Chiefs defense, as far as the rookie draft class goes, I think that player was Trent McDuffie and is Trent McDuffie. And so the Chiefs really need him to come back onto the field and put in some good snaps and sooner rather than later. So my fingers are crossed he can come back and play versus Buffalo. Overall, the Chiefs defense so far in the season, in terms of yards per play, they're 11th in the NFL, giving up 5.3 yards per play, which is pretty good. That's about what you need from this defense for them to have their best shot of making a deep run into the playoffs. However, it kind of goes downhill from there. So in points per drive, they're 27th, and points per game, they're 23rd. And this is a little bit of discombobulation here because, well, they're 11th in yards per play, but they're 23rd in points per game. You'd expect those two numbers to be relatively close to one another, but they're not. And the reason for that is because the Chiefs are 30th in turnover percentage. They have not been taking away the ball in 2022. And the reason for that is because their secondary hasn't done a great job of getting their head around, and that's been a problem with Spagnuolo's defense for a long time. The cornerbacks just have a hard time locating the ball. And it's almost like they're not coached. They're more coached to play the receiver's eyes than to try to find the ball and intercept it. So if the Chiefs begin to get more turnovers, I think that you'll see their points per game allowed to drop. They have been good with quarterback knockdown. So they've been getting after the quarterback. They've knocked the quarterback down on 12.7% of the dropbacks, their opponent dropbacks in 2022, and that's good for sixth in the NFL. So that's one bright spot. And I accredit that to Steve Spagnuolo's blitz packages. He's done a great job dialing up pressure. Lastly, and this is what scares me for the Bills game, they've given up a quarterback rating of 105.5 so far in the season, and that's 28th in the NFL. That has to improve. And you would think that once the Chiefs bring Trent McDuffie back into the fold, who did an outstanding job limiting quarterback production from his cornerback role last year in college, I think that'll carry over into the NFL. He'll have some lumps, he'll hit some bumps, but that should improve. But overall, I think the state of the defense with this influx of young talent, they've had moments. They've been doing a good job with yards per play. That hasn't married up to the points that they've allowed. So we need the Chiefs defense if they want to make a push into the playoffs, a deep push into the playoffs and potentially win a Super Bowl. They have to improve. And what have Steve Spagnuolo's defenses done, over the course of his career? They've started the season slow and gradually improved as the season's gone on. So if we see that improvement, then I have a lot of hope for the how far the Chiefs can make it in the playoffs. But as is, if they went in the playoffs today, their fatal flaw would be their pass rush. Their fatal flaw, another fatal flaw, would be the way they've played against quarterbacks. So, two things the Chiefs have to work on is limiting the opponent's productivity passing the ball, and then getting after the quarterback and actually sacking the quarterback and not just knocking them down or pressuring them. So, things could get better for the Chiefs defense. Look for Trent McDuffie and Willie Gay to come in and help. But as of the overall state, I am a little concerned. So that's our detour that I want to talk about the defense. What do you think needs to happen with the defense? Are you pleased with the way they're playing? Are you concerned like myself, or are you not worried at all? Leave a comment. Now we're going to get into Andy Reid's grade. I'm going to do an abbreviated format so that we don't have a hugely long video. But the four areas where we're grading Coach Reid, as you know, throughout the season, we've been giving him a grade for each game, and we're checking how he does with team preparedness, key decisions, play calling, and the outcome. In terms of team preparedness, versus the Raiders on Monday night, they had 5 penalties for 72 yards. A couple of those were defensive pass interference. Once again, Chiefs secondary players not getting their head around on underthrown balls. Those are the easiest balls to intercept. If either one of those plays, the defender, Finn or Watson, can get their head turned around and locate the ball, that's an easy interception. But they weren't able to do that. They ended up getting penalized. The offensive line at the start of the game, they looked outmatched. They looked totally outmatched at the beginning of the game and began to settle in as the game progressed. That's up to Coach Reid to prepare the offensive line for the pass rush that they're getting ready to see. That's the second game this year where the pass rush has come out and the Chiefs' offensive line hasn't been able to stop it early on in the game, but then they got better as the game went on. So the offensive line has to be ready for the looks that the defensive line is going to give them, and they need to improve on that front. I thought the team withstood poor calls by the refs, particularly the sack from Chris Jones that was ruled as a roughing the passer. I don't get mad watching games very often, but I was mad whenever I saw that. And they came back from a 17-point differential or 17-point deficit to win the game. So they had a slow start. The team wasn't prepared for the pass rush. They got behind early, but they showed some resiliency. So for team preparedness, I gave Coach Reid a 20 or 12 out of 20. In terms of key decisions, we see this awesome photo of Matt right here, the hero of the special teams last week. So there were no challengeable plays during the game from Coach Reid. If you remember that Devontae Adams catch it near the end of the game, that was an automatic review. Thank goodness, because it went in the Chiefs' favor. But towards the end of the second half, Coach Reid chose to kick a field goal with Matt Wright as opposed to going for Hail Mary type play. And that ended up being the right decision. And Matt Wright hit the longest field goal in Arrowhead history at 59 yards. That's incredible. Another play that was interesting was at the end of the game with 2 minutes and 30 seconds left. The ball was on the Raiders' 46-yard line. The Chiefs were moving it. They were trying to win the game and run the clock out. There's a 4th and 3, and Coach Reid chose to punt. So, do I want the Chiefs to be aggressive in that situation? That's a really tough call. Usually, I want the Chiefs to be more aggressive, but 4th and 3 is not as easy as 4th and 1, 4th and 2. And if I had that 1,000 play rule that I've talked about all season, if the Chiefs went for it on 4th and 3 in that situation 1,000 times, would they get it more than half the time? I think the answer to that is yes. But this is where you have to weigh in some risk. If they don't get it, the Raiders are pretty much a lock to try to run the ball, run out the clock, and they've got a really good kicker with Carlson, and they could have kicked a field goal as time expired to win the game. So I think that Coach Reid did a wonderful job deciding to punt the ball in that 4th and 3, and it eventually led to a win for the Chiefs. So overall, I thought Coach Reid did a great job with key decisions, and he scores a 30 out of 30. In terms of play calling, the Chiefs passed the ball a lot versus the Raiders. They didn't go run heavy like they did against the Buccaneers. And that's one thing we've been all aching to see the Chiefs do is become a team that can run the ball with regularity. They weren't able to do it on Monday night versus the Raiders. They passed 68% of their plays. They ran 32%. So they got away from the run a little bit. And part of that's because they were down by 17. The first 15 plays, the first 15 scripted plays, they were not effective. And this is the second or third time this year where the first 15 have had a hard time putting any points on the board for the Chiefs, and it's got them in holes early. So they need to improve on their scouting, their game plan review, get better at scripting up those first 15 plays so they can put the ball in the end zone. Travis Kelce had 4 touchdowns though in this game, and that just blows my mind because the whole world knows that Travis Kelce is the primary red zone target for the Chiefs. So with the whole world knowing that and still being able to bust him open, wide open on a couple plays on the end zone, that's just amazing. So Coach Reed did a good job disguising looks, getting Reed to slip out into places where the Raiders defense wasn't ready for him to be in that position. And it was amazing. So I give kudos to Reed on those goal line plays. In totality, the Chiefs averaged 5.8 yards per play on offense versus a very poor Raiders defense, and they should have done better. So 5.8 yards per play is pedestrian for the Chiefs offense. Maybe a little bit below average. Actually, well below average. And they did this against the Raiders defense that hasn't been playing great ball up to this point. So the productivity of the offense was not quite there. So I give them 20 out of 30. I give Coach Reed a 20 out of 30 on the play calling grade. In terms of outcome, so the Chiefs won a close game versus a divisional opponent. That's always a plus. But the Raiders hadn't shown much up to that point in time in the season. They were 1-3 coming in. They had been beaten by handedly by several teams, and the game was a lot closer than it should have been. They had a big deficit early, and even though they won the game, it was a close game that they squeaked out at home versus a team that hadn't been playing well. So I give Coach Reed a 15 out of 20 on that section of the grade. In total, Coach Reed got a 77 out of 100 against the Raiders, which netted him a C. And as far as the season goes, he's averaging a 73% on the year. Now, that 73% with a 4-1 record is pretty impressive. There's room for improvement. But the Chiefs have to come ready to play versus the Bills next week. If they get down early by more than a score, it's not going to look pretty. The Bills aren't a team where you want to fool around and get behind early. So Coach Reed has his work put out for him against an extremely good Bills defense. We already saw what he did against a good Buccaneers defense. He basically took him behind the tool shed or took him behind the woodshed. And you hope to see that Reed can continue to scheme up a good offensive game plan versus an extremely good Bills defense. And it should be a hell of a game. So I'm looking forward to Bills week. I know you all are too. And with that, that concludes our video. So make sure you like and comment. Tell me if you think Reed's grade was fair, if you think he should have gotten a better grade versus the Raiders, or if he should have gotten a worse grade. What do you think about the defense so far? How have the rookies done as far as making an impact? How do you feel the state of the Chiefs defense is? Do you see any fatal flaws on this team? As always, remember once again to like and subscribe. So if you like what you see here, make sure you hit that like button. If you subscribe, it helps the algorithm direct this video to different people who may be interested in watching Chiefs content. And as always, I just want to say thank you to you all for viewing. I appreciate everyone who comes around here and just takes their time to enjoy some Chiefs content with me and the rest of RGR football. And for that, I just want to say thank you again. But that's all I've got. So this is Gary McKenzie, RGR Football, Gridiron Lines, signing out.
Thanks for watching this video from the team at RGR Football. Click these videos to see more and subscribe to RGR Football.